So there are some varieties of plums and apricots on the farm which do not bloom with the other varieties of plums and apricots. They take their own sweet time to wake up from their winter dormancy. These are the late bloomers, and we have some of these on our farm. These late blooming apricots and plums are the ones that extend the harvest period of apricots and plums. These late varieties and the bloomers are also the ones that escape the late spring frosts, but they're going to be exposed to the rains, they're going to be exposed to the monsoons and all kinds of diseases that the rains bring. I was here on this farm documenting the plum blossom, and if you remember, this tree behind me was in full blossom. Today on the 6th of April, this has almost set fruit. 10 days ago this was in full blossom. There still are some flowers on this, but this is in a stage when it wants to set the fruit. And again, if you remember, this tree behind me, the Stanley variety of the European plum, had not yet woken up from its winter dormancy. The bud break had happened, but it had not woken up. There was no flowers on this tree, and today it's in full blossom, as you can see. So just 10 days ago, the buds had swollen. There was not a single flower on it, and now it's in full bloom. This, like I said in the previous video, is a self-fertile variety. The European plums are the self-fertile varieties of plums, which means that they don't necessarily need cross-pollination, but cross-pollination is the ideal kind of pollination for any fruit tree, because that brings in different genetic trait and that can lead to a better fruit size, better quality of fruit. So this is the Stanley. All the flowers are blooming, but unfortunately for the European varieties, they don't have another variety next to it which is blossoming. I have another European variety of plum called the Diante. I should have ideally planted it close to the Stanley variety, because both of them could have benefited each other because their bloom times overlap. But Diante is not very close by. But like I said, this is a self-fertile variety. It does not necessarily need cross pollination. So this Stanley variety is going to be a late harvest variety. We're going to be harvesting it maybe towards the end of September, and this is the plum that you can dehydrate. This is the plum that you can make prunes out of. So the Stanley variety can also be called a prune, because any plum that can be dehydrated is essentially a prune variety. And these Japanese varieties, this one is the black diamond. These are the ones in the stage when they are setting their fruit. They don't have too many flowers on them. If they had any, they would also benefit our Stanley over there, which does not necessarily need cross pollination but will definitely benefit from it. This branch over here has some flowers and it is not very far away from Stanley. So this is black diamond, that is Stanley. So hopefully the pollen from this flower can go and pollinate Stanley and help in cross pollination. So this is the look of the farm right now. Anything that you see blooming right now are the cherries. The cherries have a very bright white kind of a bloom, and these are corresponding with the bloom time of our European plums. And over here I see some flowers on this apricot tree. Again, this is going to be a late blooming variety, and this is the Fugo, I think. And yes, this is the Fugo, and it still has some flowers and it is still blooming, though most of the flowers have had a petal drop, but some are still there on the branch, because this is the late harvest variety. And Fugo, by the way, is a variety of apricot which needs cross pollination, and I wonder if there's an apricot to help it in that process, but I don't see any. Most of the apricots, like this one over here, has already set fruit. You can see these small fruits over here. In a couple of weeks, or in a couple of days rather, I'm going to come and start the thinning process. There are too many on this branch. You see the difference over here. This has already set fruit, whereas Fugo, which is the late variety of apricot, still has some flowers on it, though most of the flowers have dropped now, and hopefully this will also come in this fruit setting stage very soon. Nectarine also is a late blooming variety. This is not something which blooms along with the peach. The peach, the local peach that we have on the farm, blooms very early, but not the nectarine. Nectarine, like I said, is nothing but a peach without a fuss. This variety is called the stark red. And again, shining very fiercely over here is this cherry tree. And most of the cherry trees are in bloom. Anything that you see white is either a cherry tree or the late blooming plum variety like this one over here. This is the late blooming plum. This is the Diante, and this has bloomed on the 25th of March. The buds had swollen, but it had not bloomed. There was not a single flower on it. Last year as well, there was not a single flower on it because this is a very young plant, remember. Diante along with Stanley are also called the prunes. They're called the prunes because their plums are dehydrated and they are dried, and they are unlike the Japanese varieties which are had fresh from the tree. So in full blossom now, this is the Diante. And in the adjoining row we have the apricot, which has almost set these fruits, which are almost ready now to be thinned. And this is a plum over here which is in a mid bloom kind of a situation. So this one is called the black gold. The black gold is a late harvest variety as well, but not as late as the European varieties, not as late as the European varieties, Stanley and the Diante. And behind over here in the last row is pink jewel. Now this is definitely a late variety. So this is the pink jewel and it is now in full bloom. This is the late blooming variety of plum, but this is not the European variety. This is the Japanese variety. This is a variety that we're going to harvest towards the end of September. And this is, unlike the Stanley and the Diante, not a self-fertile variety, which means that this needs cross-pollination. So the pink jewel, because it's not a self-fertile variety, is going to benefit from cross-pollination, which possibly can happen with the European varieties of plums that are blooming along with this. Bloom time of the pink jewel is corresponding with the European varieties, the Stanley and the Diante. We're going to harvest the pink jewel towards the end of September along with Stanley and Diante. So Stanley, Diante and the pink jewel are the varieties of plums on the farm that extend our harvest period of plums. We start harvesting our plums towards the end of July and we are harvesting them even towards the end of September with pink jewel. And this over here is the late blooming peach variety, which I think is the donut peach. Yes, this is the Pileti first donut peach, and this has now blossomed. I noticed one thing about the peaches tend to hold on to the flowers much longer than the apricots and the plums. This had bloomed actually much earlier, but this tree has clung on to its flowers, and this is going to be harvested not along with the local peach but much later than that. And this is my favorite peach, the donut peach or the Pileti first peach. Then I see over here in this row an apricot in bloom right next to our sea buckthorn. This is the Fugo, and Fugo, this particular tree at least, is in more or less full blossom. The flowers are on the tree, they have not yet had a petal drop, and this has had a blossom now. And this is a variety that we did not harvest from last year, so we do not know when we are going to harvest it this year. I am expecting that the harvest of this apricot is going to be towards the end of August. And Fugo, like I said, is not a self-fertile variety of apricot. This needs cross-pollination. So this is the first week of April and this is the time for cherry blossom. These are the trees that we planted here 3 years ago, have blossomed top to bottom. This one, the flowers over here look exactly like the cherries. They're also white, but this I recognize is the late harvest variety of plum called the pink jewel, a Japanese variety. And this is the Diante again, and this has not yet opened up its flowers completely. Some of the flowers have bloomed, but not all of them. And this is, along with Stanley, and European variety, a flash of white and a flash of pink. Pink flowers are distinct to the nectarines and the peaches. This one here is, I think, a nectarine. Yes, this is the stark red nectarine. Like I said, the nectarine had also flowered a long time ago, but they take their own sweet time to set their flowers. This is what I noticed. This tree has been clinging on to the flowers since a really very long time. This apricot has almost set its fruit. This is the Bella Dumella. Bella Dumella bore us nothing at all, no flowers, no fruit setting, nothing whatsoever last year. So we are very happy to see these fruits, but of course we're going to thin them out. We're going to leave maybe one or two on this branch, and its neighbor in bloom is, of course, the pink is always the peach or the nectarine. This one is, where is the tag? This one is the platy first peach, my favorite donut peach. Of course, a cherry, because this is the cherry bloom time. Our plums have also started setting their fruit. The apricots have set their fruit as well. And coming into its own is also the sea buckthorn. The sea buckthorn over here has started producing pollen, which means that this is the male sea buckthorn. Sea buckthorns are either male or female, and the pollination is aided by the wind. They don't really require the bees, they require the wind. The pollen from here should go with the wind and land on the female sea buckthorn. And this, of course, is the cherry tree, and next to it blooming, the late blooming peach variety. This, I am guessing, is again the donut peach. And our very young apple tree has also started blooming. This one is on the M9. This here is, of course, the European late harvest variety of plum called the Diante, now in full blossom. This is the cherry tree. The apricot over here, this one I think is the big red, and the fruit has really become large over the last couple of days, ready for fruit thinning. Cherry in blossom. This cherry over here is a late harvest variety, and the buds have barely broken bud. This again is the pink jewel, the late harvest variety of plum. And then blooming over here, we have also for the first time a very young pear tree. So anywhere on the farm you see a flash of white, that has to be the cherry, unless it is, of course, the late harvest variety of plums like the pink jewel, the Diante, and the Stanley. And this plum over here in full bloom is Stanley, the European variety of plum. This is right under the duck pond, and aiding Stanley in cross pollination hopefully would be the pink jewel, which is close by and is also in bloom.